Selamat Putong. I send you greetings from Gaborone, Botswana. My name is Dumi. I am a human rights defender, youth advocate, and someone who believes in the importance of humanity above all. These principles I've been taught, for example, in bringing the value of a note. If I was carrying 100 ringgit or 100 US dollars, the value wouldn't change whether it's crumpled on, it has exchanged hands, it has migrated, it's folded, or it's a crisp, clean note from a reserve bank. Why? Because everyone understands its value within the context of trade, its value within the context of being able to secure livelihood, and its value in the context of larger global economies. Now, this small note can be equated to the value of human life. We can never sit and question ourselves when we talk about what humanity is. A world that would actually be made of love, be made of shared prosperity, and more importantly, the respect for individuals, acknowledging the fact that we are diverse, acknowledging the fact that there's so many different qualities and multiple layers to our talent, our experiences, our family, and other societal engagements, whether it's in spirituality or cultural. And I think the importance of this is that these are often the sources of differences. The conflict that exists today are based on ideologies that emanate from these spiritual, cultural, or ideological institutions. And it's important today, when we're talking about the Global South, to be conscious of the fact that there's a need for young people to be involved in multiple processes. You might not be affected today with issues of death penalty, but is it right when we speak about the aspirations of a democratic society that cannot respect its most marginalized and vulnerable of individuals who have limited freedoms? And we do understand that they do pay the price in terms of the crime that has been committed. But does that mean they must be denied vote? Does that mean they must not be able to exercise their agency or their voice and visibility in the spirit of self-determination? What does a nation actually amount to when it speaks of democratic principles if even the worst of society cannot be treated with dignity? Stella Nyanzi has been arrested in Uganda on issues of freedom of expression. And the statements or utterances that were shared on social media were spoken of in terms of immorality. My challenge to you is, when we sit and talk about what is right, it might be within the law, as was slavery. It might be within the law, as was the denial of women's rights to vote. In this context today, I challenge you to question what your role is, even if you're unaffected. Because there are issues of privilege, and privilege isn't just economic or instances where you find it's a birthright. Privilege is when you're unaffected by an issue. So for me, as a queer individual, if I am persecuted on the basis of who I am, what does that then mean about the leaders, the policies, and the democratic aspirations of the country that I live in? Being part of the most vulnerable and marginalized has taught me the importance of ensuring that those who are the most sick, those who are the most vulnerable, should be put in front of the line. African culture, normally when there's a wedding or a funeral and food is being served, you find there are people who assist in terms of getting some food and serving the elders and young children. This is because they understand that there might be challenges, and there might be some level of accommodation that's needed if they were to fall in line with everyone else. So what is your role in ensuring that those who are most marginalized, most vulnerable, and most subject to different forms of exclusion, in terms of agency, in terms of gender, in terms of something that one might think very simple but complex as sexual orientation, and other disparities that make up our differences? What is your role in exercising and ensuring that the democratic principles can be entrenched in the way that we have socialized our ways of work, engagement, and connecting with other individuals? Creating change will require of us to have challenging conversations, and my call to action today is to challenge you to have the kinds of conversations that can encourage creativity, that can inspire change, and that can ensure Each and every one of us isn't comfortable with the norms, with the standards, the practices, and the impunity that exists today in human rights violations. I implore you all the way from Gaborone, Botswana, to encourage you to include young people in your conversations. I encourage you to be of diversity and to ensure that no one can be left behind in the solutions that you developed and the decisions that you're making and the different deliberations that you'll be having beyond just the offices of Amnesty and the programmatic work. I think it's important to ensure that if we are to achieve the sustainable development goals, we're to ensure that these linkages are evident with human rights discourse. Human rights are indivisible and universal, and SDGs are interdependent and holistic, which means one cannot be achieved without the other. I sincerely hope this day is fruitful in deliberations and that it can encourage more people to challenge the norm and ensure that no one is left behind, whether we're talking development or human rights. Thank you very much. My name is Dumi from Botswana. Bula!